Have you ever been treated like you don't have a voice? Like your opinion doesn't matter in decisions about your own life? There's a woman in the Bible whose father stood before an army and said, "Whoever conquers this city can marry my daughter." She wasn't asked. She wasn't consulted. She was the prize. But what she did next taught every person who's ever felt powerless the most important lesson about asking for more. Her name was Acsah, and she refused to stay silent. This is her story. Acsah's name means anklet, an ornament of beauty and value. She was the daughter of Caleb, one of Israel's greatest warriors. At 85 years old, Caleb said, "Give me this mountain," and went up to fight giants. He was legendary, fearless, faithful, but even legendary men make choices that hurt the people they love. Joshua chapter 15 verse 16 records it plainly. And Caleb said, "Whosoever smiteth Kirjathsepher and taketh it, to him will I give Acsah my daughter to wife." Her father announced that his daughter was the reward for whoever proved himself in battle, not who loved her, not who honored her. Whoever conquered a city. She wasn't asked if she agreed. She wasn't consulted. She wasn't given a choice. Women didn't have voices. Daughters especially didn't. Judges chapter 1 verse 13 tells us, "And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, and he gave him Acsah his daughter to wife." Othniel conquered the city and won Acsah, given like property. No one asked her what she wanted. But Acsah wasn't just a passive victim of her culture. She did something that almost no woman in that time would dare. She used her voice. Joshua chapter 15 verse 18 says, "And it came to pass, as she came unto him, that she moved him to ask of her father a field." She urged him, she pressed him, she pushed Othniel to ask her father for land, because the territory they'd been given wasn't enough. Without resources, without water, the victory was hollow. But Othniel didn't do it. Maybe he was intimidated. Maybe he thought it was ungrateful. Whatever the reason, he didn't ask. And Acsah was left with a choice. She could accept silence. She could resign herself to living with less. Or she could do what almost no woman would dare. She could go to her father herself. The verse continues, "And she lighted off her ass, and Caleb said unto her, What wouldest thou?" She dismounts from her donkey, a deliberate formal gesture. She stands before him, making her presence impossible to ignore. And Caleb asks, "What do you want?" That question was an opening. She could have said, "Nothing, Father, I'm grateful." She could have minimized her needs. But Acsah had already made her decision. So when her father asked what she wanted, she answered with clarity and boldness. And it all began with 3 words that no woman in that culture would dare to say. 3 words that would either destroy her or define her. "Give me more." Verse 19 records her words, "And she said unto him, Give me a blessing, for thou hast given me a south land. Give me also springs of water." Give me a blessing, something significant. And then she got specific. "Since you have given me land in the Negev, give me also springs of water." She acknowledged what she had received. She wasn't ungrateful. But then she named the problem. The Negev was desert. Land without water can't sustain life. It's not enough. And Acsah said the thing most of us are terrified to say. "What you've given me isn't enough. I need more." Think about the risk. She was speaking to a man who could say no, who could be offended. She was asking for something beyond what had been given in a culture where women didn't ask. But she asked anyway. Because needing more doesn't make you greedy. Asking for what's necessary doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you honest. And God honors honesty. Acsah stood before her father, the man who gave her away as a prize. And she said, "Give me a blessing. Give me springs of water." The silence that followed held her entire future. Would he say yes? Would he honor her courage? Or would he remind her that prizes don't make requests? Would he tell her she should be grateful? Everything hung in the balance: her dignity, her future, her needs, her voice. And Caleb had the power to honor all of it or crush all of it with a single word. And what Caleb did next would teach us forever what it looks like when someone in authority responds to honest need with generous love. Joshua chapter 15 verse 19 gives us Caleb's response. And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the nether springs. He gave her. He didn't argue, he didn't lecture, he didn't make her feel small for asking. He heard her request, recognized the legitimacy of her need, and he gave her what she asked for: water, life, the resource that would make the land actually useful. But notice what Acsah did before she asked. She acknowledged what she had already received. Thou hast given me a southland. She didn't pretend she had nothing. She named the gift first, and then she named the need. Give me also springs of water. Also, in addition to, not instead of, but because what you gave needs something more to fulfill its purpose. This is the balance most of us never learn. We think we have to choose between being grateful and asking for more. But Acsah shows us that you can honor what's been given and still request what's necessary. Gratitude and boldness aren't opposites, they're partners. How many times have you needed something but didn't ask because you thought you should just be grateful? Acsah could have looked at the dry land and told herself, "At least I have land." But she didn't, because God doesn't honor false contentment. He honors honest need, expressed with respectful boldness. Now look again at what the text says. And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the nether springs. Not just springs, not just one source, upper and lower, two sets of springs, double provision, more than she asked for. Because when you ask with honest need and respectful boldness, God doesn't just meet the minimum, He exceeds, He multiplies. The upper springs would flow from the mountains. The lower springs would bubble from underground, water from above and water from below. Abundance, overflow, not just to survive, but to thrive. Not adequate, but abundant. Acsah was specific in her request. She didn't make a vague prayer. She said, "Give me springs of water." She knew exactly what the land needed. She named it clearly, and Caleb gave her exactly what she asked for, and then some. This is where most of us fail. We know what we need, but we don't ask. We hint, we hope. We wait for people to read our minds. We suffer in silence and call it humility. We accept less and call it contentment. But that's not what God calls us to do. He wants us to come with honest, specific, bold requests. Because asking honors Him. It says we believe He cares. It says we trust He can provide. Caleb gave Acsah the upper and lower springs. The daughter who had been given away as a prize became a woman who understood her worth. The woman who had been treated like property became a person who knew she had the right to request what she needed. Instead of being punished for her boldness, she was blessed. Instead of being told she was asking for too much, she received abundance. Acsah wasn't asking for luxuries. She was asking for water, for the fundamental resource that would allow the land to be productive. Her request was legitimate. Her need was real. Because there's a difference between greedy demanding and honest asking. Acsah was operating from genuine need combined with knowledge of what her father could provide. This is the key to bold asking. It's not about demanding whatever you want. It's about bringing genuine needs to a generous father and trusting that he cares enough to provide what's necessary. It's about being honest about what's lacking instead of pretending everything is fine. It's about having the courage to say, "What you've given me is good, but it's not complete, and I need more to fulfill the purpose you've called me to." How many of us are living with land and no springs? How many of us have been given something good but incomplete? How many of us are spiritually, emotionally, relationally, financially living in barely getting by because we're too afraid to ask for what we actually need? Without the springs, the land sits dry and unproductive, and we sit there pretending we're fine, calling our resignation contentment, calling our fear humility. But Acsah shows us a different way. You can look at what you've been given, acknowledge it as a gift, and still say, I need more for this to work. You can honor the giver and still name what's missing. You can be respectful and still be bold. And when you do, you might discover that the answer isn't no. The answer might be yes. The answer might be more than you even asked for. If Caleb, an earthly father, could respond to his daughter's request with such generosity, how much more will our Heavenly Father respond when we come to Him with our needs? Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 and 8. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. This is what Acsah's story teaches us, that asking isn't selfish, that boldness isn't disrespectful, that naming your needs doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you honest. It makes you a daughter who knows her father's character. God isn't waiting for you to prove you can survive on the minimum. He's waiting for you to ask, because asking is an act of faith. Acsah asked for springs and received upper and lower. She asked for water and received double provision. She requested what she needed and discovered that her father's generosity exceeded her expectations. And the same is true for you. When you come to God with your legitimate needs, when you ask with honest boldness and respectful faith, you might discover that His answer isn't just yes. It's yes, and more than you imagined. Because that's who He is. Not a stingy God doling out minimal provisions, but a generous Father who delights in giving good gifts to His children, especially when they have the courage to ask. Acsah's name means anklet, an ornament worn on the ankle that signified beauty, dignity, value. In ancient culture, anklets were declarations. They said, I matter, I have worth. Caleb named his daughter this. From birth, her identity was tied to value. But here's the tension. Caleb named her valuable and then gave her away as a prize. He called her an ornament of worth and then treated her like a reward. The disconnect must have created a crisis of identity. Am I valuable because my father named me so? Or am I just property because he gave me away? Do I believe what I'm called? Or do I believe how I've been treated? Acsah chose to believe her name. She chose to live like someone valuable, and that belief gave her the courage to ask. Because you don't ask when you think you're worthless. You don't make requests when you believe you don't deserve anything. But when you know deep in your core that you are valuable, that your needs are legitimate, then asking isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It's living in agreement with your identity. This is what most of us struggle with. We know intellectually that God says we're valuable. We've heard the sermons, we've read the verses, but we don't live like we believe it. We accept treatment that contradicts our worth. We stay silent when we should speak. We settle for less when we deserve more, not because we're humble, but because we don't actually believe we're as valuable as God says we are. But Acsah shows us that when you truly believe you're valuable, asking is natural. It's not arrogant to request what you need when you understand that you matter. Acsah was an anklet, a symbol of value, and she lived like it. Even when circumstances tried to tell her otherwise, she knew who she was, and that knowledge gave her courage. So here's the question you need to answer. Do you know who you are? Not who people have told you you are. Not who your circumstances suggest, but who God says you are. Because until you settle that question, you'll never have the courage to ask for what you need. You'll keep accepting less. You'll keep staying silent. You'll keep living with land and no springs because you don't believe you deserve the water. Let's talk about where you're settling right now. Where in your life are you accepting land without springs? Where are you making do with something incomplete? Maybe it's a relationship that gives companionship but no intimacy. Land without water. Maybe it's a job that pays bills but crushes your soul. Land without water. Maybe it's a faith that has the right words but no real encounter with God. Land without water. You know what you need. You can see what's missing. But you haven't asked. You've told yourself you should be grateful. You've convinced yourself that asking for more is greedy. You've stayed silent, and you've called it humility. But it's not humility, it's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being told no, fear of discovering that maybe your needs don't matter. But what if the answer isn't no? What if you ask and discover that the Father you're asking is generous? What if you request springs and receive both upper and lower? What if your silence isn't protecting you from disappointment but preventing you from provision? What if the thing standing between you and the abundant life God wants to give you is simply this: you haven't asked? James chapter 4 verse 2, ye have not because ye ask not, not because God is withholding, not because you don't deserve it, but because you don't ask. You're sitting on dry land while springs are available if you'd only request them. You're accepting barely enough when abundance is possible. The only thing missing is the ask. Now let's be clear, this isn't a blank check theology. Acsah wasn't asking for luxuries. She was asking for necessities. But within the realm of legitimate needs, within what's necessary for you to fulfill the purpose God has called you to, ask. Ask boldly. Ask specifically. Ask respectfully, but without apology. Tell God what you need. Name the springs that are missing. Don't make vague prayers. Be specific. Be clear. Be honest. If you need provision, name it. If you need healing, request it. If you need wisdom, ask for it. If you need breakthrough, lay it out clearly. Don't minimize. Bring the real need, the whole need, the specific need. And then trust that the God who loves you is also generous toward you. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. Exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. That's the God we're praying to. Not one who barely meets requirements, but one who exceeds, who does abundantly, who goes above what we even imagine. Acsah's story ends with her living in the land, with the resources necessary to make it thrive. Productivity instead of barrenness. Abundance instead of lack. A woman who learned that her voice mattered, that her needs were legitimate, that asking wasn't selfish. And that's how your story can end too. Not with you accepting less and calling it faith, but with you asking, receiving, and thriving. So what are you going to do with Acsah's story? Are you going to go back to your dry land, convincing yourself that asking is too risky? Or are you going to identify what you actually need? What's the request you've been too afraid to make? What's the spring that would transform your land? Name it, and then ask. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you feel worthy. Just ask. Because God honors the courage to request more than he honors the fear that stays silent. Your Father in heaven is not stingy. He's not annoyed by your needs. He's not rolling his eyes at your requests. He's your Father, and he knows what you need. But he's waiting for you to ask. Because asking is an act of faith. It's a declaration that you believe he cares, that you trust he can provide, that you know his heart toward you is good. Before we end, I want to know what you thought of this story. What stood out to you most? Was it when Acsah asked for the first time? Was it when she asked for more and received double? Was it the meaning of her name? Or was it something else entirely? Leave a comment and tell me. I'm going to read every single comment personally and respond to as many as I can. Your thoughts matter. If you found value in this video, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we bring you stories from Scripture of people whose faith, courage, and boldness teach us how to live with greater purpose. These aren't just ancient stories. They're blueprints for how to approach God. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. someone who's been settling, someone who's been silent, someone who needs to know that asking isn't selfish, that boldness isn't arrogance, and that God delights in meeting the needs of his children when they have the courage to ask. Acsah was given as a prize, treated like property. But she refused to let her treatment define her worth. She knew she was valuable. She knew her needs mattered. She knew her voice counted. And she used that voice to ask for what would make the difference between surviving and thriving. And her father gave her not just what she asked for, but more, because that's what good fathers do. You are valuable. Your needs matter. Your voice counts. And the God you're asking is generous beyond measure. So ask. Ask boldly. Ask specifically. Ask with the confidence of a daughter who knows her father loves her. And then watch as he provides springs, both upper and lower, for the dry land of your life. As we step into this new year, may you have the courage of Acsah, the boldness to ask, the faith to believe, and the confidence to know that you are valued, your needs are legitimate, and your Father delights in giving you abundantly more than you could ask or imagine. Happy New Year. God bless you until the next story.